Okay, now that you have gone through the various experimental observations of Lenard and Mellicle, okay, let us look at the laws of photoelectric emission. Okay, all the conclusions, whatever we have got in the experiment, will be put together and we call them as laws of photoelectric emission. So look at the first observation. The process is instantaneous. See, as soon as UV rays were incident on the photosensitive metal, immediately there is a photoelectric emission. It's not a delayed process, the process is instantaneous. This was the first observation. Second, photocurrent is directly proportional to intensity of incident radiation. More the intensity, more is the photocurrent. Third observation, maximum kinetic energy of electrons are independent of intensity. Okay, they don't depend on intensity. The maximum kinetic energy of the photoelectrons is independent of intensity and depends on frequency. It is depending on the frequency, but it is independent of intensity. Because we have seen that even if intensity is changing, stopping potential was not changing. That means maximum kinetic energy of electrons does not depend on intensity, but it actually depends on frequency. Then the fourth observation, stopping potential is directly proportional to frequency. As frequency is increased, stopping potential is also increased. So the nature of graph between frequency and stopping potential was a straight line but not passing through origin, with a positive slope and a negative intercept. So these were the experimental observations which we can call them as the laws of photoelectric emission. Now let us see how to explain each and every of these points. That means how is it explained that it is photocurrent is dependent on intensity, how kinetic energy depends on frequency, not on intensity, and so on. So the explanation for this photoelectric emission was explained by Einstein. Okay, Einstein gave a proper explanation for this photoelectric emission. Now let us see what was this Einstein's explanation. Okay, how could he explain the concept of photoelectric emission by taking the help of Planck's quantum theory. Now let's look into the Einstein's explanation for photoelectric emission. So as I told you, Einstein took the help of Planck's quantum theory to explain this photoelectric emission. So according to Einstein, photoelectric emission is because of the interaction between photon and electron. Okay, I told you whenever light interacts with matter, it behaves like particles and it obeys Planck's quantum theory. So interaction between photon and electron causes photoelectric emission. Okay, say for example, this photometal has a work function W0 is equal to h nu naught. So when a photon whose energy is h nu, okay, the energy of the photon should be slightly greater than the work function of the metal. If it is less than the work function, it won't be able to remove the electron from the metal. So when a photon of sufficient energy is incident on a photometal, this photon collides with the photoelectrons or the free electrons. Then according to the conservation of energy, the total energy possessed by the photon is utilized in removing the electron from the metal. That means a part of the energy is utilized in removing the electron and the remaining is converted into kinetic energy. So since h nu naught is the minimum amount of energy required to remove an electron, kinetic energy would obviously be maximum. So this was the equation proposed by Einstein. Again I repeat, an interaction between photon and electron is the cause of photoelectric emission. Whenever a collision takes place between a photon and an electron, then energy of photon is utilized in removing the electron, plus remaining is converted into kinetic energy of electron. If work function is minimum, the kinetic energy would be maximum. So this is in accordance with conservation of energy. So this was the explanation which was given by Einstein. Now look at each and every law that we have studied in photoelectric emission, how it can be explained by using Einstein's explanation. And remember, this collision is elastic. Okay, he assumed the collision to be elastic collision, so there is no loss of energy to the surroundings. Only a part of the energy is converted into its kinetic energy. So look at the first law. We saw that photoelectric effect is an instantaneous process, and we know even collision is instantaneous. It is not that a collision occurs between a photon and electron and after 1 hour there will be an emission of electron. The process is instantaneous. It takes very less time to interact and then come out. So the first point of laws of photoelectric emission is explained. Second one, what was the observation? Photocurrent is directly proportional to intensity. See, I told you in the beginning of the chapter itself, in the particle nature, intensity is proportional to number of electrons emitted per number of photons per unit time into h nu by A. Keeping the frequency or energy constant, if you increase the intensity, increase of intensity implies number of photons is increased. If you have more number of photons coming and interacting with the metal, more number of electrons will be ejected. So this explains why photocurrent is directly proportional to intensity. Increase the intensity, photocurrent also will increase. Increasing of intensity in the sense, more photons are incident on the photometal, we have more number of photoelectrons. So this is the second point. First point was regarding instantaneous process. Collision is an instantaneous process. Third, okay, kinetic energy depends on frequency, not on intensity. So look at this equation. Is this the maximum kinetic energy of electrons? Is this dependent on the incident frequency? How can we write Ke max as h into nu minus nu naught? See, if you increase the frequency, nu naught is constant. Okay, threshold frequency is constant for a given metal. If frequency is increased, kinetic energy also will increase. So on what factor is the kinetic energy of electron depending? It is depending on frequency, not on intensity. One more point what you can tell here is, if my incident frequency is less than the threshold frequency, okay, if nu is less than nu naught, then what will happen to this above equation? Kinetic energy is h into nu minus nu naught will become negative. And we know kinetic energy can never take negative values. So this implies there exists a certain frequency called threshold frequency. Only above that frequency there will be photoelectric emission. So this is how even the kinetic energy concept was explained by Einstein's relation, and we call this equation as Einstein's equation for photoelectric emission. See, I have written it in terms of frequency and kinetic energy. Look at various ways of writing the same equation for numericals. Okay, you can write it in terms of frequency. The first equation, h nu is h nu naught, this is the work function. Okay, in terms of work function I write, plus Ke max. Work function is h nu naught plus maximum kinetic energy. You can write it as hc by lambda. Lambda is the incident wavelength. hc by lambda naught, this is the threshold wavelength, plus Ke max. You can replace this maximum kinetic energy in terms of stopping potential also. I can replace it as E times of V naught. What is V naught here? Stopping potential or cutoff potential. So all these equations represent Einstein's equation for photoelectric emission. So based on this equation you have a number of numericals. And one more point you can say regarding this relation is, okay, you can verify it even graphically. See, we have seen that in Millikan's experiment, what was the nature of frequency versus stopping potential graph? If you plot a graph between stopping potential and frequency, we have got a straight line with a negative slope, with a positive slope and a negative intercept. Let us see what type of graph will this equation predict. Because I am taking stopping potential on y-axis and frequency on x-axis. Modify this equation in terms of frequency. Okay, so write the equation in terms of frequency or in terms of stopping potential. H nu is equal to h nu naught plus E V naught. Okay, you remember V naught is the stopping potential. So how can we write this equation in terms of V naught? Okay, if I write this equation in terms of V naught, E V naught is equal to h nu minus h nu naught, or V naught is equal to h nu by E minus h nu naught by E. This is taken on y-axis, frequency on x-axis, intercept is C, slope is N. Compare the relation. See, did we get a straight line? See, our experiment also predicted that frequency and stopping potential graph is a straight line. What is the slope? Slope is equal to h by E. And intercept is negative, which is h nu naught divided by E. So Millikan has calculated the slope experimentally. Okay, by doing the Lenard's experiment, he found out what is the slope of this frequency versus stopping potential graph. So he observed that the slope of this graph was coming out to be equal to h by E, where h is the Planck's constant. Okay, tell me what is the value of Planck's constant? 6.64 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule second. Okay, in SI system, this is the value of Planck's constant. And we know the E value is nothing but charge of electron. 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb. So he got the slope exactly equal to h divided by E. So even this has proved that Einstein's explanation is correct explanation for photoelectric emission. And for this explanation, Einstein has received a Nobel Prize for his photoelectric emission. So this is how we can say that using Einstein's relation, photoelectric emission explains the particle nature of light. Okay children, so now that you are familiar with how Einstein's theory could explain photoelectric emission, and by using particle nature we could explain all the experimental observations made by Lenard and Millikan. And now at the same time, let us see how wave theory fails to explain these concepts. Okay, so what are the drawbacks of wave theory to explain photoelectric emission? So look at the first drawback. See, we have seen that photoelectric emission is an instantaneous process. But wave theory predicts that if you are not getting photoelectrons from a photometal for a light of given frequency, okay, which is less than the threshold frequency, expose the surface to the light for a large interval of time. That means increase the time interval. So what should happen with increase of time interval? According to wave theory, the surface should slowly absorb the energy, and after some time it should emit electrons. But does it happen practically? No. If the frequency is less than threshold, for however time you are exposing the photometal, there is no photoelectric emission. But wave theory predicts it should occur, because according to the wave theory, with increase of time, the surface has to absorb more and more amount of energy. So that is not taking place. That is the first drawback. Second drawback. Okay, say you have given light of sufficient frequency, there is photoelectric emission. If you increase the intensity, then photocurrent, at the same time kinetic energy has to increase. According to wave theory, if you are increasing the intensity of incident light, the kinetic energy of electrons has to increase. Let's see how is it so. So we know intensity is proportional to square of amplitude or amplitude of electric field. If intensity is more, energy of the incident radiation is more. If energy is more, a part of it is utilized in removing the electron, remaining has to convert into kinetic energy. More the intensity, more is the energy, more should be the kinetic energy of electrons. But even this we did not observe. By increasing the intensity, kinetic energy of electrons is not going to increase. It changes only when you change the frequency. Here we are not changing the frequency. For the same light, we are increasing the intensity. So increase of intensity predicts increase in kinetic energy by wave theory or for wave theory. But it is not practically observed in the experiment. So this is the second drawback. And according to this wave theory, there is no such thing called threshold frequency. As I told you in the first case, it has nothing to do with threshold. Even if it is less than threshold, it has to emit photoelectrons after a large interval of time. But we know there is a particular frequency only above which there is a photoelectric emission occurring. So because of these three reasons, we can say that wave theory fails to explain the photoelectric emission. So it can be explained only by particle nature of light. So finally, by this photoelectric emission, we could prove that light has both particle nature as well as wave nature. Whenever light is interacting with matter, it is having, or particle nature is dominant, otherwise it has wave nature. So both put together, what conclusion can we say about the light now? Light has dual nature. It has both particle as well as wave nature. Now because light has this dual nature, another scientist called de Broglie has applied the same concept to matter. Okay, he predicted that just like light has dual nature, particle nature as well as wave nature, every moving matter or every moving particle also has wave as well as particle nature. Okay, so this dual nature is present for each matter, or every moving matter has a dual nature. This was a prediction made by whom? De Broglie. He not only predicted, he said that any particle which is moving will have a wave associated with it, and these waves he called them as matter waves. Okay, since matter also has a wave nature, every moving particle has a wave associated with it, and these waves are called as matter waves. Remember, they are not electromagnetic waves, they are just called as de Broglie's waves or matter waves. And he predicted that the wavelength of matter waves is given by h by p, okay, where p is the momentum. Lambda is equal to h divided by m into v. This was the wavelength associated with a moving particle. So where m is the mass of the particle and v is the velocity. Now you can clearly see how is lambda related to velocity. H is a constant, mass of the particle if it is constant. How is lambda related to v? Inversely. Faster the velocity, lesser will be the wave nature. So if speed is more, lambda will automatically decrease. Or this is momentum and this represents wavelength. So if mass of particle, okay, look at how is it related to the mass of the particle. If mass of particle is more, wavelength associated with it will be less. If mass decreases, wave nature will dominate. Again I repeat, from this relation you will observe that particles which are lighter particles which are less mass, like electron, wave nature is dominant. Whereas for heavy particles whose momentum is high or mass is high, wave nature is subsiding, particle nature is dominant. So this conclusion we call it as de Broglie's matter waves. Again I repeat, just like light has dual nature, de Broglie predicted that even moving matter can possess wave nature. So every moving particle has a wavelength associated with it, which is given by h divided by p. If momentum is less, wavelength will be more. If momentum is more, wavelength will be less. So wave nature of electron is dominant because its momentum is less. Whereas wave nature of football or a human being which is having a heavy mass will be very less, because mass is more, wavelength will be very, very less. So this was predicted by de Broglie. Now look at this equation for de Broglie's wavelength. Lambda is equal to h divided by mv. You can express it in different forms, okay, because they may ask you express it in terms of kinetic energy of particle or express it in terms of the accelerated potential and so on. Okay, look at various formulas for de Broglie's wavelength. So lambda is equal to h by p. This is in terms of momentum. Okay, write the expression in terms of kinetic energy. We know what is the relation between kinetic energy and momentum. Kinetic energy is equal to p square by 2m. So you can replace momentum as under root 2m into k. So lambda by under root 2m into kinetic energy, where m is the mass and k is the kinetic energy. Express it in terms of accelerated potential. So if you are accelerating the particle through a potential v, then we know kinetic energy acquired is E into v. So write it in terms of accelerated potential, under root 2m into, okay, I'll write it as q, where q is the charge of the particle. So q into v. If it is electron, I can write it as ev. If it is q, any other particle, you can write its charge, q into v. So this is in terms of potential. Okay, potential v. This equation is in terms of kinetic energy. Okay, these are all helpful for numericals. Then you can express it in terms of temperature, absolute scale of temperature. Hope you remember in kinetic theory of gases we have studied. Okay, what is the absolute, what is the average kinetic energy of the particle equal to? Ke can be written as 3 by 2 kT. Okay, 3 degrees of freedom. For each degree we have written it as half kT. So kinetic energy in terms of Boltzmann constant for a particle, it is 3 by 2 kT. So then lambda becomes how much? H by under root 2m into. So in the place of Ke, I will write 3 by 2 kT. 2 gets cancelled. Okay, 3m kB into T. Okay, where T is the absolute scale of temperature and kB is the Boltzmann constant. So all these equations represents de Broglie's wavelength expressed in various terms: momentum, kinetic energy, potential difference and temperature. So remember these relations. Okay, we'll be getting back to this in numericals, and then we'll be studying about the de Broglie's relation.